Hey everyone, it's Ryan here. It's time for another episode of Ryan on Gaming. Today's topic was actually submitted by one of you. As I've mentioned before, submit topics and I'll do them. So somebody a while ago messaged me on PSN by the username SomeoneSly, basically messaging me along the lines of, Sunset Overdrive, why it's exclusive, why, it's only with Xbox One, and he can't really justify buying an Xbox One for that game. Why is the game not possibly going to come to PlayStation because Insomniac still owns the IP? That whole sort of scenario. Why is Sunset Overdrive exclusive? Why is it not going to come to PlayStation or other platforms like PC? That is going to be our basic topic. So to kick it off, right off the bat, this is kind of a very similar topic to like Titanfall, for example. If you remember the whole Titanfall situation, and I did a bunch of videos about Titanfall when it was coming out, which was, this was when I was kind of like looking like a huge jackass, because I was very confident in, me saying back then, like, oh, that game is more than likely, like, a timed exclusive. Like, oh, don't worry, it'll come to PS4, blah, 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 and then bada bing, bada boom, Microsoft purchased the full exclusive lifetime rights for that game, so it could not go to PlayStation. And this is kind of a similar situation, so I'm going to stay much more humble on this topic. But, so Insomniac Games does own the IP to Sunset Overdrive. So basically, Sunset Overdrive is their game. Microsoft does not own it. They do not own it in any way, shape, or form. So what that tells you right off the bat is it is extremely possible, keyword possible, that the game could go to PC or PlayStation 4. That's the key word there, possible, because Microsoft does not own it. However, what we don't know, and what we didn't know with the Titanfall situation is, what is going on behind the scenes? What conversations were happening between Microsoft and Insomniac Games? What deal is in place? What contract was written? That is the part we don't know, and we might not find out for a while until the game possibly comes out on PS4 or possibly doesn't, right? This is one of those situations where only time is going to give us an answer. But Insomniac Games, if you remember a while ago, wanted to become independent. It's not that they, they hated Sony. It's not that they didn't like working with Sony. It was that they wanted to start making games and they wanted to start owning their games. Traditionally, we all know Insomniac Games has made tons of PlayStation games. They made Spyro. They made Ratchet and Clank. They made Resistance. The problem with that is that Sony owns all those names. Well, not Spyro, but they own, Sony owns Ratchet and Clank and Sony owns Resistance. So if Sony wanted to make another Ratchet and Clank game or another Resistance game, they don't need Insomniac. They can do it if they want to. Insomniac, and they're developers, they're creators, they're passionate about what they're doing. They like creating games and they like creating characters, and I can agree with Insomniac for their decision to go independent. They want to own their own characters. They want to own their own intellectual properties. So that is what Insomniac wanted to do with, going forward with when they developed Fuse and with now Sunset Overdrive. But then you're asking yourself, okay, well, if they wanted to be independent, why did they side with Microsoft? And we all know, Microsoft has a lot of, there's different business strategies. Sony has different business strategies. Microsoft has different strategies. A lot of Microsoft strategies is buying third-party exclusives, buying third-party content, exclusive rights. That's what they like to do. Whereas on the Sony side, Sony likes to fund a lot of developers and let them do their own thing. Sony likes to purchase developers. That's their strategy. So with the Microsoft side, this is more than likely what happened. Microsoft approached Insomniac and said, hey, we want exclusive rights to your game. You can still own it, but we want exclusivity. Again, what we don't know is how long that exclusivity is going to last, if it's a lifetime. We do not know. But maybe, it doesn't have to be that Microsoft approached Insomniac Games. It could be that Insomniac Games approached Sony and said, hey, we want to make a game with you guys. Can you help us fund it? But we want to own it this time. And maybe Sony said, we'll fund it, but we need to own it. We need to publish it and own the rights to Sunset Overdrive. And that's, of course, where Insomniac would have an issue because they want to be independent. Or maybe Insomniac approached Microsoft and said the same thing, and then Microsoft said, okay, we will help fund it, and we will, we will let you own it. It'll be your game, but in return, we do still want some exclusivity. These are just possibilities. These are just scenarios that I'm, painting for you guys. One of the, chances are one of these scenarios is definitely the truth. We just don't know. So, as I mentioned earlier, only time will tell if Sunset Overdrive comes to PlayStation at some point. But knowing Microsoft, they're very aggressive. They like their exclusivity, and they like to purchase up extreme exclusivity to the point where it does not go anywhere, like with Titanfall. But there are many, many, many examples where Microsoft does buy third-party exclusives, but it's a timed exclusivity, so it does go to other platforms. The GTA 4 episodic content came to PlayStation eventually. We all know the Call of Duty stuff only lasts like a month long for each DLC pack or something. BioShock went to PlayStation, Mass Effect went to PlayStation, Saints Row, Dead Rising, Lost Planet. You know, and it's not like these games. It's not like for every one of these games Microsoft owned the rights to them or publish them. But it's just giving you an example of how, even though a game is exclusive at some point, it is certainly possible to go somewhere else. You know, even if it was, say, published the first time, like with Mass Effect 1. It took a very long time, but it did end up going to PlayStation. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the whole deal with Sunset Overdrive. The good news is Sunset Overdrive is a great game, because that's why this is a relevant, you know, this is why it's a relevant Ryan on Gaming episode, because the game just recently came out. It's getting a lot of positive reception, and it looks like Insomniac Games has made a really awesome game. And that's good news, you know, because they want to own that name, and they do own that name, so maybe if it becomes really successful, the game can come into PlayStation and PC at some point, or it gets a sequel, and then Insomniac Games is comfortable enough with releasing it on all platforms, or maybe it gets to a point where Microsoft offers them a lot of money to the point where maybe Microsoft will own the IP, or maybe they'll own exclusivity to the second game or something. As I've mentioned earlier with the keyword possibility, the possibilities are endless. Alright, that concludes this topic of Ryan on Gaming. I hope you all enjoyed it, and like I mentioned earlier, submit topics please, just like this one that was submitted. If it's really good, I'll totally do it. So that was a good one, especially since the game just came out, so it's pretty relevant. But anyway, that's it. So I'll see you all in my next video. Keep submitting topics, and you guys take care.